We do believe as Muslims the East and the West will one day be governed by the Sharia. Indeed, we believe that one day the flag of Islam will fly over the White House.
And by Allah, we will conquer the White House. Allahu Akbar!
These statements by Muslim clerics seem extreme. Does that reflect accurately what most schools of Islam believe?
The goal of Islam in the teachings of the Quran and the teachings of Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, whose teachings that are considered authentic by Muslims are normative for Islamic law and practice, are consistent in teaching that it is part of the responsibility of Muslims to wage war against unbelievers and to subjugate them under the rule of Islamic law, and to make them pay tribute to the Muslims and to accept various humiliating and discriminatory regulations if they want to continue to practice their faith. They never enjoy equal rights with the Muslims.
But we are repeatedly told that Islam is a religion of peace.
Islam is peace.
Islam teaches peace.
Islam is a religion of peace, yes. The peace that Islam envisions is the peace that will come when the whole world is ruled by Islamic law, and Muslims have the obligation to wage war against non-Muslims until that time. And so it's a religion of violence and hatred and supremacism, ultimately culminating in an era of peace that will see the essential enslavement of non-Muslims.
There's a doctrine within Islam called al-hijra, meaning the migration. Some Muslims flee the violence in their Islamic homelands and want to enjoy a peaceful life in the U.S. But experts warn there are other Muslims dedicated to changing America into an Islamic society, one immigrant at a time.
Islam has what they view as a divine call to bring the world into submission to Allah. It's a religion of peace, but their definition of the word peace is different than the West. The West defines peace as different groups getting along. Fundamentalist Islam defines peace as when the whole world submits to the will of Allah. When the whole world submits to the will of Allah, there's peace. There's no one left to fight. And so they view their command that they want to bring the world into submission to the will of Allah. They can do it very quickly through attacks or very slowly through al-hijra, through this infiltration, so to speak. This goes back to Muhammad himself, where he was chased out of Mecca and he came into Medina as an immigrant. He looked very non-threatening. The Jews were very tolerant of him. He goes into the minority neighborhoods in Medina, finds some pagans who have grievances against the Jewish-controlled government in the city, and he begins to organize them into a following.
Muhammad and his followers then ended up beheading some 700 Jews in Medina, who earlier had shown him and his followers hospitality, but they would not embrace his theological views. Robert Spencer notes he reasoned that this was just punishment for their betraying Muhammad, which they did because he had already exiled 2 additional Jewish tribes.
And so this 3-step process of immigrate, increase, eliminate goes back to Muhammad himself, this infiltrating into a country, into the host country, taking advantage of their tolerance with the ultimate goal of organizing interior to overthrow it.
There are other Muslims who don't agree with this agenda.
Ultimately, the radicals or the Islamists, whether it be Al-Qaeda or Hamas or Hezbollah or any of these radical Islamist movements, feel that they want to establish societies based in Islamic law as they see it as theocracies. And I think our founding fathers demonstrated that the best society is that founded by religious individuals, as they were religious Christians, but were escaping theocracy. They wanted to establish a country based in liberty and freedom, especially one with an establishment clause where there was a separation of religion and state or church and state, but yet you could still practice your faith freely and be inspired by your faith in everything you do.
America has always welcomed immigrants, but you have to come through the front door. And when I came as an immigrant many years ago, I had to provide, even though I really was not working because I was young, tax that I don't owe the country of my origin any taxes, and that I had to go through medical, physical examination, not by my doctor, but by the embassy doctor. and I had to provide a police report that I don't have any criminal records. All of these things they cannot do if you just bring floods of people here. And ISIS made it very, very clear that they are sending thousands upon thousands of their foot soldiers among the refugees. I'm told that there are so many sleeper cells in the United States. The FBI kept up with them for a while, but they now they went beyond the numbers they thought they have.
I think what's happening in Europe is really an object lesson for us here. We're not facing at the moment, partly because of geography, anything like the flows of so-called refugees or migrants. People making what I think of as the hijra, the term used by the Muslims that goes back to Muhammad's time when he migrated from Mecca to Medina. Ever since, it has been one of the techniques of spreading the faith to migrate or colonize.
There's no country in the world that would not protect its borders. This is insanity. It's madness. Either people, I have to believe, they hate America and want to destroy America, or have other motives, which it can only be evil. Because the scripture is very clear. In Romans 13, it says that the government is to protect the citizenry. They're not to get involved in, it doesn't talk about anything else, education or that or the other thing. It's to protect that's the number one job, is to protect the citizens of the country. And unfortunately, those people who claim to believe the Bible in leadership, they're not obeying that part of the Bible.
There was even a leader of Islam for UK, a Joram Kudare, and he was being interviewed. And the interviewer asked him if he felt guilty that he had multiple wives and was not working because the welfare was supporting him. He said, no, Allah permitted them to live off the infidel while they are subduing them. So it had sort of a parasitic type of attitude where they can live off of the host country, where their goal is to eventually eradicate the host culture and supplant it with Islam.
Islam is not just a religion. Islam is a political and social system, and it's a repressive and supremacist political system that is in contradiction to the U.S. Constitution in numerous ways, including extinguishing the freedom of speech, the freedom of conscience, the principle of the equality of rights of all people before the law. And so, consequently, we have to fight its political manifestation, or we're going to lose those freedoms.